here have come to witness firsthand the best aerobatic display team in the world.
The Red Arrows, I think they're superb.
Just their demonstrations is extraordinary compared to the others.
They get better and better every time, which is incredible, really.
And this is the highlight of the season for the Royal Air Force aerobatic team, the Red Arrows. Today's display at Mildenhall is the culmination of months of hard work and training. During that time, the team allowed our cameras unlimited access to witness firsthand what really goes on behind the scenes and to find out what makes these pilots so special. And this is the result, the Red Arrows experience. Jersey, and the Red Arrows season is drawing to a close. They've been coming to the Channel Islands at the end of the summer for 27 years, and they're always made welcome. Their stay has now become a tradition in the team's calendar. While the ground crews prepare the jets for tomorrow's 2 shows, the pilots have an opportunity to relax at Government House as guests of the Governor of Jersey. Occasions such as this are just one of the perks of being a member of the Red Arrows. During the season, they visit many countries around the world, and they're feted by local dignitaries and heads of state. But today, for several of the team, the celebrations are tinged with sadness. John Newton, Martin Cliff and Al Hoy have reached the end of their 3-year stint with the team.
Pretty sad, really. We've had a good time, but time has come to move on, so I guess I've got to move over and let somebody else have a go.
We're obviously very sad that it's the last time here and also the end of the 3-year tour.
I mean, when you join the team, you look forward to 3 years, but they go very quickly, and you very soon get to this stage and you have to start looking at what's going to happen when you leave. And obviously leaving the sort of surroundings like this, you start to feel a little bit disappointed about it.
Yes.
It's also Andy Stewart's final year. As team manager, he not only flies the spare 10th jet and provides commentary at displays, he's the safety officer and chief organizer as well.
I wouldn't have missed it for the world. It is a Cinderella existence in a lot of ways. It's very professionally satisfying, and for a military man in peacetime to have a job where you get instant results, either the plan worked or it didn't. And you know that day, not a year hence, not 10 years hence, but at the moment, it either worked or it didn't. If it worked, that's great. If it didn't work, then you've got a job to sort something out. So it's very satisfying.
For the rest of the pilots, it's an early night in preparation for tomorrow's 2 displays. The briefing takes place on the wing of Red 5's Hawk. Team leader Adrian Thurley is concerned about the weather.
Okay. No, I don't think so. Just move that haze.
The weather conditions over the display site will dictate which style of show the team will perform. They can put on a full, rolling or flat display, and the decision can be left right to the last minute. The briefing is interrupted by the arrival of the Hercules from Scampton. Looking slightly lost are the 3 new pilots for the coming year. Jerry Bird, a former Jaguar pilot and Hawk instructor, Barry Cross, who's come from flying Phantoms on 74 Squadron, and Rob Last, another ex-Jaguar pilot. They've been through a tough selection process to reach what is probably the pinnacle of their flying careers. And yet, they're still coming to terms with the fact that they've been selected to represent the RAF as members of the Red Arrows for the next 3 years.
When you get the letter saying you're in, it comes quite a shock, and I don't think it really sinks in until you come here this week, when you actually appreciate that you're actually going to be in. Like, you've left your squadron and you're actually now here with the team for a week. So that's when it finally sinks in, I think.
It's certainly, as far as I'm concerned, a chance of a lifetime, and I've certainly been pleased to get in, and I'm more than happy and looking forward to my next 3 years in the Red Arrows.
I'm not anticipating an easy time. I think it's going to be quite a challenge. The work up I think it's going to be quite difficult, but yes, I'm looking forward to it.
For the holidaymakers on the Channel Islands, it's time for their annual treat as the pilots taxi out for one of their final displays of the summer. Every flight that the Red Arrows embark on puts supreme demands on their flying skills. Their aerobatics will look smooth and graceful from the ground. To achieve that, they have to apply as much effort and concentration as they would if they were on a full-blown military sortie. For the spectators on the ground, the weather seems perfect, but for the pilots, their skills are being pushed right to the limit. The poor visibility over the islands makes display flying even more demanding.
Guernsey was one of the worst days I've displayed in. The haze was very, very thick. You just can't see where you're going. So that was very difficult. The worst thing that could happen is that you could fly into the sea, because it's almost impossible to detect where the sea ends and the horizon starts. There's just no horizon at all. Like now we're looking out to sea here, you can see a clearly defined horizon, but you couldn't see that. And many people over the years, not in the RAF, around the world, on a hazy, no horizon, no wind, flat calm sea day, have just flown into the sea, totally unaware of their height.
Despite the problems with the weather, the team will be back on the Channel Islands at the end of next season. RAF Scampton in Lincolnshire is the home of the Red Arrows. It's here they spend the winter planning, practicing and perfecting next year's displays. The pilots are back in their green flying suits. The famous red suits will be handed out in the spring if the Commander-in-Chief thinks the team are good enough to display to the public.
See you later.
Well, I always look back to see if I can where you are, and I can never quite see your head.
The only pilot who'll be flying in the same slot in the formation as last year is Adrian Furley. All the other old hands have moved to other positions. With 3 new pilots to train and several new manoeuvres for the coming season, Adrian has a tough schedule ahead of him.
From the end of the season, we have 2 or 3 weeks leave, and then we start training in earnest. And we probably fly more in the winter than we do in the summer. We fly 3 times a day, 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, from November right the way through until May when we start displaying again. And in that time I will fly, well obviously I fly every sortie, and the new pilots will fly almost every one. And we'll fly in the region of 210, 220 practices, so it's far from a relaxing time.
The Hawk has been used by the Red Arrows since it replaced the Gnat in 1980, and it's ideal for the job. A training sortie with just 6 jets allows Red 4 Gordon Howes a chance to view some of the problems from the ground with a visiting trainee pilot.
Positions. 4's on the ground, and the boss is just completing the barrel roll at the moment. Not too bad. 5 is wobbling around a bit. At this stage, all the boss is doing is putting them slowly through the paces, being as gentle as possible. You can see how the formations change now as they complete the barrel roll, and 5's been spat wide. Primarily, he's got to look through 3 the whole time at the boss, ignoring any movement which 3 does, which is quite difficult. But we're only 2 months into training, so they're not doing that badly. Again, 5 slipping slightly wide, it's hanging on to it a little bit better. Nicely in line, a little bit of action, and as you can see, he's just gone wide at the top again. Lagging the roll slightly, 3's throwing him out a little bit, and now he's coming back in again.
This is lack of practice, that's all. I'm sure of that in the rowing. I mean, we know it can be done there. It's just a matter of not getting behind it to start with. I'm sure that's what's causing the problem. Yeah. Okay.
The English weather can severely disrupt the training schedule, but Adrian seems quietly pleased with how it's gone so far.
They're working together very well, and they're working hard, but then I wouldn't be pushing them enough if they weren't. So we're well on schedule. I would think we'll be looking comfortably to fly our first 9, probably middle to the end of January, assuming that we get reasonable weather between now and then. They seem happy, they're certainly enjoying it, so it's going well.
The deputy leader, Tony Smith, seems to have the answer to Jerry Bird's problems.
That's what must be it. No problem. One wing must be bigger than the other.
Yeah, I think so.
Absolutely. I'll take the axle out later. Tweak a bit off the edge, chop the end off.
The first team was formed in 1965 under the command of the Central Flying School. In their time, the Red Arrows have flown over 2,500 shows in 45 countries. In the foyer at Scampton, photographs of this year's pilots are on show, 2 of whom have a rather special role. Andy Wyatt and Simon Mead form the Synchro pair.
The outside turn, again, I can't really see you for most of it. I'll look at you before we roll in. Synchro split, roll go, pull go. Could be a quick roll go again because of the cloud. And remember, don't go into cloud. If you think you're going to go into cloud, roll and wait for my call.
They split away from the main formation halfway through the show and do their own thing. Many hours are spent working out new manoeuvres and getting them as near perfect as possible. A new manoeuvre for the coming season is the mirror bend. Preparation and planning makes their job as safe as possible, but today one of the dangers of flying is about to hit them, quite literally, in the form of a double bird strike.
Birds, 7. Someone's taken a bird, flight 2. Roger, me too. You okay? Engine's running okay.
The bird hit the windscreen. As you can see, it's splattered what probably is at least half to 2/3 of the windscreen. It's very, very difficult for Simon to see out. Because it's scattered down this side of the canopy itself.
Birds. Where? Oh, there.
What to be careful of here is that the proximity that the bird's impacted. There's the engine intake. And we've had a look down already, and there are some splatterings of bird on the blades. So we'll have to get in, have a good look at the engine before we can release it again to fly.
Don't ask me what sort they were.
often you know this?
I think they were lapwings.
Pardon?
Lapwings, I think. A large flock of them.
Yeah, possibly over there. I know there's
You
quite a
know,
few in that direction.
the wood.
Yeah.
The far side of the wood.
To prevent this sort of thing happening, Scampton has its own bird scarer. He has the fitting name of Peter Stork. 2 bird strikes in one sortie is a thing he doesn't see too often.
Hopefully not. No, we don't see it very often. You know, but unfortunately this happened off the airfield and there's nothing you can do about it.
It's surprising how much damage even a small bird can do to a jet, and it's a problem all branches of aviation have to deal with. So, our intrepid duo had a lucky escape, which is more than can be said of the Scampton bird life.
Say apologies to the RSPB.
During the winter, this hangar at Scampton is a hive of activity. The man responsible for the engineering standards and practices is Flight Lieutenant Charlie Kerrigan. He has to make sure that aircraft are available for winter training and for display flying during the summer.
It's a 12,000-mile service they get every year. They're stripped down, ready for the following year's displays, things such as structural integrity, component replacements, component overhauls, engine replacements, which is very important, obviously. And as you can see behind me, we're in the process of stripping 3 aircraft down for their primary star servicings. Each aircraft takes about 4 weeks to turn round to bring them back to the correct standard, we think, for the following year's display flying. This is the boss's jet for last year and this year. That's coming up for the new display season. We're actually doing a primary star on this one. We've actually changed the engine because the engine was what we call life expired. That engine was taken down to our overhaul unit, and that'll be overhauled down there in the slowness of time. As you can see, it's now on its recovery phase. It's now on its way back into being in one piece. And the guys here are actually doing the engine checks, the static checks, before we take it out for its ground run. On the whole, this one has been no major problems with this aircraft. The boss has looked after it quite well. The next aircraft, however, as you can see, is majority of the port wing is in bits. This aircraft has had cracks. We found cracks to its leading edge, to its rib 3 and 4. Now that means we have to take off what we call the closing panel and actually get inside to replace the ribs. Now that can take anything up to 8 to 10 days, which is a major penalty. So we don't like to see that sort of thing during the summertime, obviously, because we can't afford the aircraft to be on the ground for any length of time. So we have to catch this sort of thing in the winter to forestall any problems in the future.
The difference in paintwork is due to the team having to borrow aircraft from other RAF bases.
In the winter, when all our airplanes have to be serviced and taken to pieces, we have to borrow two to keep the training going. So they're on loan for about 4 months, and they're just bulk standard training airplanes with no smoke.
The all-important ground crew are each responsible for specific engineering tasks. They often operate under difficult conditions, sorting out problems against the clock. It's just as much an honor for these guys to work on the jets as it is for the pilots to fly them.
Yeah, that's the idea. Well,
Today is a sad day for the manager, Andy Stewart. He's moving on from Scampton to the RAF Staff College, and he's handing over to Les Garside Beattie.
Thank you.
There we go. That's the end of the handover now. That's the most important.
Handover complete.
Handover complete. Have your photograph. Practice.
It's in the paper. It's got to be official.
You thought you were taking the red arrows. You're actually taking this desk.
Good luck. Cheers, mate.
Can you
I'm going to
fly
need
it?
it.
You
are.
I
suppose I'll give you a ring.
In the week's handover I've had with him, it's been very apparent to me that he's extremely capable, which is just as well, because that's why we picked him, to be successor, to be manager. So I have no worries whatsoever about him actually running the team. That only leaves one thing for me to say to him, which is not immediately apparent to somebody coming onto the team, particularly as manager, and that is keep your sense of humour.
You can feel the helmet just catching on the collar.
The guys will rib him. They've certainly ribbed me for 3 years. You don't need luck, so I won't wish him good luck. Keep smiling and keep a sense of humour.
RAF MOD ones as well?
No, because as you can see, it's quite shallow.
Obviously, I would be kidding myself and everybody else, and nobody would believe me anyway if I didn't say there was some anxiety about what's going to happen. But it's also a lot of excitement too. The job of the mange in the Red Arrows is unique. It's a one-off. Not only are you dealing with service personnel and the team, which in itself is something very special, but also I have probably more contact with members of the public than any other job in the Air Force. Hopefully in, say, 3 years' time I can look back and say, maybe I didn't quite make it, but I did work hard and we almost got there.
With Les already measured up for his red suit for the next year, the tailors get to work on the new guys. Attention from the media is something that Barry, Rob and Jerry will soon have to get used to.
Oh, that's lovely. Okay, thank you very much.
Today, all 9 pilots will fly together for the very first time.
Okay, so we've done 125 sorties to get to here this winter. This is probably the first of another 189 ships before October. The thing to remember is it is a practice, okay, it's not a display. So if you're unhappy with something, you're not sure, don't know what's going on, the calls get mixed up, don't worry about it. We'll sort it out, then put it behind you and concentrate. Okay, there's nothing really that we haven't done. In one way or another, we just haven't put it all together. The only thing we haven't done is a left-right brake with 9, but that's not a problem. We've done it with 8. And you just haven't done it before, so there's no snags with that. Everybody happy? Just think about the calls. Think about what's coming next, and don't jump over somebody. Check in at 45.
Make a mistake and forget about it.
It's not only the pilots who are feeling a little tense on this big day. The only people present are a handful of family and friends. For the wives, it can be quite a nerve-wracking experience seeing their husbands flying in close formation.
It's nice and exciting to see him doing it for the first time and know that he'll be pleased that he's actually got to the 9 ship. It's quite emotional really, I suppose. They've done well. I find it quite frightening when I'm at home and I can see them out of the window. It's always a relief when they've landed safely. I must admit. Much the same, to be quite honest. It's something that Barry's wanted for years, so it's nice that he's achieved his aim, but on the other hand, it's something that I've not necessarily wanted. But it'll be, I suppose it'll take a bit of getting used to. I think that would be the honest thing.
With the first 9 ship sorties successfully completed, it's a time to celebrate.
Oh, my dear chap. Well done. You right? Thanks, sir.
This was the biggest Mockerbird I've ever seen in my life. Crowd like well crowd.
I think it went all right, boss.
For Barry Cross and son, this landmark mission was an enjoyable experience.
good fun. Went past very, very quickly though once it started. And once you get into it, as you say, you're concentrating so hard on what you're doing, you haven't got a chance to think about the fact that it's the first one. Oops, sorry about that.
Well, it's actually more of a big deal, if you like, than I thought it would be. I mean, the fact we're flying 9 is not really different for me, if you like, the actual physical flying of it, but it's just actually turned out to be quite a big psychological hurdle, if you like, and it was very enjoyable.
You do get moved.
I think it went very well. I'm very pleased with it. You normally expect the odd mistake on the radio or something because I'm just a little bit nervous because it's the first time they've flown 9. We did have some funny calls right at the end, but that's almost to be expected. I think it's probably the best trip we've flown this winter, to be honest. There's a long way to go yet, but that's a major milestone out of the way.
It's been a successful day, but for some, all that food and drink can become a bit too much. Once a year, the Red Arrows and their wives are invited to Silverstone by the John Watson Driving School. They try out all sorts of motorsport, from karting to rallying, and it's an occasion to relax and put behind them some of the pressures of the winter training. Mind you, the competitive spirit is still there.
Great boy.
Very well.
If he's doing very well, why is he spun over there then? Why is it going the wrong way around the track? Who's winning then?
Engineer.
Let's wave that flag at him a little bit.
I think there's something wrong with
The team are obviously used to being in a tight formation, but the karting turns out to be a little too close at times. The race will eventually be won by Gordon Howes, but not without a fair share of controversy. Andy Wyatt is punted out on the last lap, and it's broken his chain.
Well, it's typical, one of the new guys drove straight into the side of me. I mean, they did a similar thing in the air, and hopefully he'll be disqualified.
You never know.
Fortunately, he did come last.
Thankfully. Imagine it. I think that's illegal, isn't it? Rolling somebody off the top.
Well, it cut me up, so I thought it was fair enough. I know Senna does it all the time.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Well done.
Thank you very much. We keep the same helmets up, Caroline.
No, leave the helmets there. We're going rallying next.
The pilot posing in the full Nigel Mansell race gear turns out to be Adrian Thurley. He obviously fancies his chances as driver of the day. Mastering handbrake turns is certainly different from looping the loop, but thankfully none of the pilots attempted their barrel rolls. In fact, the rallying proved so popular, there was even talk of some pilots giving up their day jobs.
I'll have a bit of a sweat on that one. Tremendous. Good fun, that is. I've never tried anything like that before. But I could get into that. I mean, I would give up flying for racing if I could. Yeah. I'm too old.
After a quick spin in the skid control car, the team move on to the muddiest discipline of the day.
Dead easy to use. All the controls are on here. There's no foot controls at all.
Thank goodness they control their jets better than these contraptions. For the wives, This was the highlight of the day.
Before the jump, there's a big muddy puddle.
Sorry, a big muddy what?
Brilliant fun.
Just stand here a minute.
Thing is, I'm just as muddy underneath this as I am on the top of it. It doesn't matter though. It's good for the complexion. Oh gosh, fantastic.
What on earth possessed you to go through that puddle?
Well, you told us to.
Not to be outdone by the ladies, first line engineer Sid Miller joins in the fun.
You're going bath in it now, go on. Yeah. Give us a helmet.
So, after a quick shower, it's time for the awards ceremony.
You're going to be depressed to know this. Driver of the day, Simon Mead.
I've always wanted to put something around your neck.
Is it alright if I get in this one, Nick? Is that alright?
Just great fun. It's nice to be out with the team. It helps the team sort of gel together as a group. And it's good preparation for the season, which is almost on top of us.
In the spring, the Red Arrows spend several weeks at RAF Akrotiri in Cyprus, and it's here that everything comes together. The team add the final polish and turn a well-honed flying display into a masterpiece of precision aerobatics. They practice the full display 3 times a day, and every sortie is videoed and played back at the debrief. It's an important part of the training. It may look good to the pilots in the air, but it's the view from the ground that really matters. The display may have looked just about perfect, but this sortie wasn't without its problems. But you have to understand the lingo to understand what the problems were.
For some reason he got himself close and tight, pulled out of it, and obviously he was very stretched along.
Yeah.
How he got in that position, I don't know.
I was just waiting for you, mister.
I was just in the wrong position.
I know, yeah.
It was a huge time. I was a lot closer to you than
It's your airspace.
I seemed to be a lot slacker turn from you because I was way out front. And that's why I ended up wrong. You two had done a slack turn because you've done a slack turn because of Rob.
Attention is soon diverted to more important matters.
The excellent Akrotiri food.
Stale bread, boring filling.
The reason they come here in the spring is for the fine weather and flying conditions. Well, that's the theory. The storms are over quickly, and the team are soon preparing for yet another sortie into the Cyprus sky. The new manager, Les Garside-Beatty, is training just as hard as the pilots. Today, he's performing his first public commentary as the Arrows try out their new display in front of service families based in Cyprus. The show will take place on the other side of the island, so Les will have to take a helicopter from Akrotiri to the location. It's a routine he'll perform on many occasions when the team displays at non-airfield sites once the season starts. The plan is that Les arrives well before the team start the display, but problems with traffic, communications and microphones can often disrupt the proceedings.
There's your PA system. That's your jetty. Right, now, are you going to have to go onto it?
Hi, when you're ready for the work.
The Red Arrows will put on over 100 shows in the coming season. Part of Les's job is to set all these up and plan the season's diary.
Testing 1, 2, 1, 2.
He also has to check out each display site beforehand so that he can warn the pilots of any potential hazards. But to the public, he's the guy who tells them what's going on during the display. And it's all a question of timing.
The show we're doing this afternoon is one of our final practices for the training that we've been doing this winter. And we hope on Thursday or Friday of this week to be formally approved as the 1992 Red Arrows, the aerobatics. Race 2 and 3 drop back the wings of the diamond to form our impression of the first supersonic airliner, the kart.
One of the advantages in being the manager at venues like this is that Les gets to meet the public, while the other pilots have landed and are hard at work back in the mess bar. For the manager, it's been a long day. The team get few days off in Cyprus. When they do, they certainly know how to make the most of them. The fun and games are soon over.